Give them a round of applause.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Perfect. Always great being after lunch. I'm glad Michael warmed you up. So we are going to have a great panel today, although I want to note we are not going to take questions from the audience due to time, unfortunately, so you can grab us when we're off stage, but we have a panelist with a flight to catch. So I'm here today to talk about unique approaches to creating meaningful social impact and empowering the communities in which we work. My name is Adam Roy Gordon, and I'm the Executive Director of United Nations Global Compact Network USA. And I'll be moderating this panel sponsored by Stardust. Bold business moves, leading lights in social impact. The UN Global Compact, if you're not aware, is the UN's corporate sustainability initiative. We report to the Secretary General and really want to ensure that there's a private sector voice in the conversations happening at the UN. And we're here to uphold a lot of principles that the whole world has already agreed to and that the private sector plays a critical role in achieving. This applies as much to the rights of women and girls as anything else. These are fundamental human rights. And for that reason, I'm very pleased to be here today. Let's welcome today's panelists, Anne, Marvin, and Katherine. You can read more about their inspiring accomplishments on the website by scanning your QR code on the papers found in your folder and around the venue. So let's dig right into it and start with a bit of an icebreaker question, as it were. We've been talking today about bold investments, but small gestures can also be meaningful. And so I want to ask each of you if you could share an example of a small impact that's had a lasting impact on you. And we'll go down the line. We'll start with you, Anne.
Thank you. So this morning was great because the very first reflection session that we had, it did cause me to think exactly how to answer this question. And everybody has their stories. And I'm humbled, and I've been so fortunate to have been able to afford a university and then found a good job, and so many people and women and girls in this world do not. But one thing that I think we all share is when I first started my career, I had kind of a confidence issue and imposter syndrome, and I was very fortunate. Most women, I don't think, naturally seek out sponsors in their workplace. That doesn't come as natural to us as it does to men, and I was very fortunate to have a senior executive, a man, sponsor me. And that gesture really helped me to become where I am today.
Perfect. Marvin.
Well, good morning. Is it morning? It's afternoon.
It's morning somewhere.
I've been a philanthropy professional for almost 8 years, and I often say that it started in the first grade. Right? So my first grade teacher, her name was Cassandra Frederick. She ended up becoming my high school counselor. And the first grade class trip was to the Toledo Science Center. I'm from Detroit. And my mama could not afford it. And Ms. Frederick knew that I was her top science teacher. And so she noticed I had not turned in the permission slip because I didn't even ask my mom. No, she didn't have it. She paid for me. She bought my lunch that day. And these small acts of personal philanthropy are really what I've been seeking to not need for young people. Like how to make those stories of young kids being inspired to do this work because of acts of kindness more systemic. So
Yeah.
Cassandra Frederick, if you find her on Facebook, tell her Dr. Carr said that.
Katherine, I'm not even going to beat that, but it's your turn.
Yeah.
So mine may be a little bit complementary to that, actually. I am incredibly passionate about lifting up the next generation of leaders. And as part of that, kindness and connection are so important, as we all know, as human beings. And I would ask all of you to reflect on the question that we all ask each other probably 5 or 6 times a day, which is, how are you? And what do we normally say?
Good, how are you?
Missed opportunity. During COVID, one of the things that we started doing as a team was to encourage people to use their emotional vocabulary. And I found that by inserting that small intention in something as sort of, common as answering the question, how are you, can lead to much more meaningful connection. And that's what it's all about.
That's great. So as much as small acts of kindness and personal acts of kindness matter, clearly businesses and corporations have a lot of impact and influence. So I'd like to dig into some questions, and I'll start with you, Anne. Colgate-Palmolive has an initiative called The Power of We, and the focus is on sustainability. What are the most important factors to consider in driving the social impact pillar in your work?
Right, so I just want to frame our strategy and what sits behind the power of we for us at Colgate. First of all, Colgate's an $18 million company, and you probably know oral care, but we also have pet care, which includes pet nutrition, personal care, and home care products. And so, we carefully focus, we with a capital W-E, on what's most material and relevant for our business. So we built a strategy which has 3 ambition pillars: driving social impact, helping millions of homes, and preserving our environment. And the North Star is we're reimagining a healthier future for all people and pets on our planet. So what sits behind those pillars, driving social impact, is around the health and well-being, not just physical, but mental and financial for our own employees and for our supply chain, which we'll get into more in a minute, as well as strengthening DE&I with a heavy emphasis on women across our workforce, and then the work we do in our communities, which is really important, in enabling and lifting up the communities where we live and work, so they can afford our products and they can afford a better livelihood. So that's kind of the driving social impact.
That's great. Marvin, moving over to you, perhaps a slightly larger company even than Colgate.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, right?
I have to be nice to him, they're our biggest customer.
So from your vantage point, as the largest customer of Colgate, what is the most pressing need today, and how does Walmart create shared value in that space? And to follow up on that, how has the initiative you lead at Walmart taken bold moves towards that issue?
You said a very important word, shared value. And so for Walmart, shared value is our approach, not just to how we do business, but philanthropy. We believe that when we do business that advances society, not only do we make our customers help our customers to thrive, we help our supply chain to thrive, we help our buyers to thrive in the company. For us, though, I think one of the most pressing issues is opportunity. And Walmart, aside from this federal government and the People's Army of China, Walmart is the biggest employer in the world. And we have decided in the last several years to use our employee base, our social bond around the world, and the workforce opportunity as our key to providing equal access to opportunity. And so many things that we have right now, our 1.6 million US associates have access on the front line to a program we call Live Better You. Live Better You is after we made our racial equity commitment, free college for any Walmart associate. 100% books and tuition through the LBU program. Today we've had 37,000 associates graduate with each their associate's degree. The good thing about that is those individuals who completed Live Better You leave Walmart 4 times as fast. But for us, we see that as a win, right? They're leaving, moving on to higher paying, higher mobility jobs. And so the mobility question for us is what's most important. And so digging a bit deeper into our work, my work is tied to Walmart's post-George Floyd, post-summer social movement work. Walmart pledged $100 million through the company and through our foundation to address racial inequity in 4 areas: Black health, Black wealth, Black education, and criminal justice reform. And so our work, the reason I'm here today probably, with the invite from know me, is we're really thinking about how might Walmart, how might our partners as well invest in young people, specifically the young people that we know are going to jail. And we know that victims of survivors of trafficking are much more likely to experience the justice system than others. And so that is the opportunity agenda for us. And so we're helping not just Walmart, but all of our partner employers to get access to those young people for jobs.
Oh. Well, from consumer goods to retail and now on to the metaverse.
Yeah.
Catherine, when you were...
And I should say both of these people are my former clients, so having worked in the ads.
This is a great panel, everyone. When you were at Meta, Catherine, you were the woman behind Meta's DEI initiative in the internship program. It's a pretty critical role. Can you talk about how you started it before the buzz and how you approached getting it off the ground?
Sure. So I'm wrapping up a 13-year run at formerly Facebook Meta. And I've had a lot of great opportunities and a lot of chapters of stories. But the reason I'm here is to talk a little bit about what I would consider the best opportunity that I had in 2016. I guess that's before the buzz, technically. You know, we didn't at Meta set targets around representation in our company or in leadership until 2019. But in 2016, I had moved from Facebook New York to Facebook Austin, just down the road. And I did that in order to launch our small and medium business team. So the team that would support the millions of advertisers and thousands of partners using our free and paid tools. And as part of that strategy, we needed to 5x a multi-billion-dollar ads business. And so as part of that, we were ramping up and scaling a team of account and partner managers over sort of a 3 to 4 year time frame. We had to do it very, very quickly. But we knew that the opportunity and volume of headcount like that gave us the opportunity to put a stake in the ground around building representation. I don't know about what you guys think about tech, but white bros come to mind. And the reality is that is not what the businesses and the people on our platform look like. And so this was our opportunity. And so I'd say the most impactful thing that we did was to really rethink how we recruited and interviewed and ultimately hired people. And the first thing was just really fundamentally rethinking referrals. I mean, how many people have either been a referral or made a referral in your business? Yeah, we all have. The problem with that, of course, is that our networks often look, feel, think a lot like us. And so we knew that we needed to go and sort of find talent where they were. So we went out to HBCUs, HSIs, veteran organizations, and created an internship program that was a sophomore to junior to a new grad program, which then was our pipeline. And as part of that, when we brought people into the interview process, we had very specific structured questions and a structured list of criteria for evaluation. And as part of that, we were able to sort of effectively move our numbers from single digit to 35% representation in a matter of 3 years. Now, the harder part, which we'll talk about.
Let's wait for the applause.
First of all, the question, I just want to say I'm not the woman behind anything. I think it takes an army of a community of advocates and people who have relentless focus. So that's one. And then the second thing that we'll talk about in a minute is that getting people in the door is actually the easy part.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, so taking on that idea of kind of diversifying the workforce and creating meaningful passive entry, going back to Walmart, what is your approach to using philanthropy and unlocking access to hidden or untapped talent pools? And what have been some of the systematic challenges that have been referenced that you've faced or continue to see?
I think Walmart because of our size and scope, has a unique approach to philanthropy and where we sit. And so just for framing, there are 3 companies: Walmart US, Sam's Club, Walmart International. And the Walmart Foundation, Walmart.org, actually sits at the top. And so we are actually in the CEO office. So all 3 of those companies report to Walmart corporate. And so because of that, the Chief Sustainability Officer, who is the Walmart Foundation's president, has influence down through each of those 3 companies. Everything from who we hire, how we hire, everything from how we think about people in the supply chain. And so because of that, we take a shared value approach to our philanthropy, where you will rarely find a grant that the Walmart Foundation gives. We gave $1.7 billion in kind of donation, cash donations last year. But you'll see rarely those investments, those grants, not aligned with a business proposition. And so Walmart doesn't invest in K-12 education because Walmart doesn't believe that K-12 are people who are their customers or their employees and employers. We invest in early career opportunities. We invest in upskilling frontline retail workers. We invest in people in supply chain to ensure that there is no trafficking in our supply chain around the world. And so what you'll find is that when we invest in what we call systems change efforts. Well, systems change efforts, so I'm newish, 2.5 years of corporate philanthropy, but I come from traditional grant making. And the thought that a company would be involved in systems change effort outside the corporate space really brought me in. And so systems change is this belief that there are 6 conditions across the world that hold inequity in place. And so we strategically invest in policy, in research, in resource distribution, in mental model and narrative change across the world on topics from Cambodian and Indian smallholder farmers all the way down to how we hire second chance employees who are leaving prison. And so for us, the philanthropy unlocks talent, unlocks opportunity in the way that, yes, Walmart benefits from it, but the communities we serve benefit from it. And so that's super important for my portfolio, right? And so because what it allows for me to do is to work every day with business partners all around the world, specifically here domestically, one, to ensure that that I provide access to the programs that we're funding. So I'll give a quick example of what it looks like. One of the issues that Walmart is, of course, one of the largest grocers in the country, but it's also growingly a provider of medical access. And so for Walmart, we are addressing the racial inequity between Black and white women when it comes to infant and maternal health. And so in addition to making a pretty significant investment in the National Association of Black Doulas. A doula is someone who usually is there to support the birthing process. We made this investment in the national infrastructure through our philanthropic giving. We've also started a pilot program across several dozen stores in the South, which is providing, these are in cities with the worst inequity, providing free access to doula services for frontline store employees who are having children for 10 weeks, for 5 weeks before and after pregnancy. And so that is how we're actually advancing the work of the business through philanthropy by ensuring that the infrastructure to support that across the South is there. And so, but of course, that doesn't just benefit Walmart employees, it doesn't benefit all the women of color, but white women too, right? Because this isn't just for Black women, it's for all women across the South to benefit from this investment. And I know, I don't want to go too much more, but another thing that Nomi Network is as a proud person of, we're thinking deeply about the role that Walmart can play in unlocking untapped talent. And part of that includes 4 focus areas. Young people who have parents in prison, young people who are just as involved, young people who are in the foster system, and survivors of trafficking. And we decided to partner with the Nomi Network, provide a Nomi Network, I think with a $500,000 grant this year to really start in Dallas to develop the infrastructure to ensure that we connect survivors of trafficking to employment. And the hope is that, and nudge, nudge to Dan, I don't know if she's in the room, that scales not just across the South, but across the country, across the world, how we can get companies to invest deeper and deeper into survivors, because we already know that is an important aspect of their well-being and their success, to ensure that they have access to economic mobility.
I know, it's hard to beat that in, but but I think what that really highlights is the incredible impact that companies can have in the communities they serve and impacting change. And not all companies are the size and breadth of a Walmart, a Meta, a Colgate, and so that does lead me to the next question to you, Anne, in terms of what you would encourage other companies to do. in order to engage and really raise the quality of life and future in the communities that they serve. We all have a responsibility.
Right, so I want to start by saying, having the right policies and frameworks in place can't be underestimated. And ensuring that all employees understand what those are. So you can go to our public website and you'll find what we call our Statement on Labor Practices and Human Rights. And in that, we outline 3 really critical components. First and foremost, the employee code of conduct. Then we have a supplier code of conduct, which goes across all our supply chain. In fact, every service and purchase agreement, the supplier must sign the code of conduct. And then we have our human rights strategy. But I want to focus mainly on our employee code of conduct. So every year, every Colgate employee, not as big as Walmart, we have 34,000 employees, has to take the training. It's mandatory, and we have 100% compliance every year. And I've been doing it since 1912. I started 32 years ago, and that code of conduct's been in place since 1987. It gets updated. All of this gets refreshed frequently. But in the code of conduct, it reminds us, importantly, of our values and what's important to Colgate in framing our ethical behavior. So not only within our own operations, but in our supply chain and in the communities where we live and work. And we really, take that to heart. Every employee, we know our values and we bring it to life through the work we do. And like Walmart, we focus our efforts in our communities on what's relevant to our business. So I want to give you an example as well. So we have a long-standing program called Bright Smiles, Bright Futures. It's a 30-year-old program, and it's designed to bring oral health, education, and services to children all over the world in underserved communities. And this is important to our business, obviously, because half our business is oral. We're the world's leader of oral health. The world uses 20 billion toothpaste tubes a year. We make a little over half of that. So it's important to us. And despite that, many children and many families in underserved communities they may brush their teeth once a week if they're lucky because they can't afford it. So this is something that's very important to us. And oral health, 2 years ago, the World Health Organization declared oral health as a gateway to overall health. I mean, it leads to so many things, right? So since we've started this program, we've reached 1.6 billion children around the world, and we have a target to reach 2 billion by 2025, and we're well on our way. The way we're going to kind of accelerate that is through digital and social, because we're finding new and creative ways to reach children. So this is a critical program for us. It's helping to drive, and it's good for the business as well. There's a shared value because it's helping to get Colgate toothpaste in the hands of more people, but also raise their livelihood. And in many parts of the world where we operate, particularly across Africa, we partner that program with access to clean water and sanitation, which is absolutely critical when we get back to the topic of women, because that starts to it raises the livelihood and quality of life of women and girls, because now the women can have time to work and girls have time to go to school. And we're actually measuring some of that. We're seeing some of that make a difference around, particularly in these communities.
It's fantastic. Back to you, Katherine, and with regards to inclusivity. How do you design for inclusivity? And what does that mean for you as a supervisor or for the company beyond the initial design? We've talked about engaging communities, but within the product.
Yeah, so I mentioned this is the harder part. Getting people in the door is one thing, but making sure that they feel they have a voice and can contribute and make an impact in the business is longer, it's multifaceted. And this idea of designing for inclusion, you talked about it with Black maternal health, that if you help the most vulnerable communities, in fact, it helps all. And I'll give you an example, pretty famous example, curb cuts, right? Designed by people who are disabled to help navigate sidewalks. Who benefits? Moms with babies in strollers, high-flying executives with their bags trying to get through the streets of New York City. This is what it means to design for inclusion. I talked about how quickly I had to ramp up my team, and I wish that I could say I got it right. But I think Wayne was saying earlier in the panel beforehand that you really need to lean into mistakes. And I think that's just a huge part of leading through inclusion. It starts, of course, with making sure that the policies are in place, that there's accountability, that it's about training, but not just training when and done, also creating planning, holding managers accountable, and then enabling community. So earlier we were talking about the importance of employee resource groups. As a leader throughout my career, I've always said to people who came in up until 2016, put your head down, do your work, focus on your job, and then do your extracurriculars. And the reality is, employee resource groups are not an extracurricular. And so instead of saying that, one of the things we started to do was to say, that should be your first stop to build community. It also was the first stop for trying to bring allies along. So, all that said, designing for inclusion, you want to try and do it in parallel, if not beforehand. And it takes thought, it takes intention, but if you do it right, again, getting people to the table sooner is going to make the business more impactful. So as an example, I had a Black female leader in 2020 came to me and was, representing the Black community and all of the grief that people were feeling around racial injustice. And she said to me, we want to do something. And she brought to me the fact that 1% of the businesses that we served were Black and brown. So we've done all of this work to bring in folks on our team that were more representative. And it was she that said, we need to do more. And it wasn't just about giving away ad coupon credits, it was about giving people the mentorship and the support that insight brought. And so designing with inclusion ultimately is not only the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do for business.
That's powerful. So Marvin, I wanted to dig into something you alluded to earlier, started touching on, and that is the supporting practices that Walmart provides to young people and adults that have faced adverse childhood experiences. So I wonder if you could go a little bit more in depth on that.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the curb cut effect. I think, especially in philanthropy, so I started on the philanthropy side and how that influences business. I mean, creating solutions for the people who are farthest from equity, like you mentioned, really does provide access to the entire enterprise, right? I'm an engineer by training, so randomly I'm people like a PhD in engineering, how to get into philanthropy, no idea. Exactly.
That's a case study.
But one of the things that I learned in my engineering work, which is why engineers are amazing, employee engineers, is in a system, people think you have to focus on building out the subsystems. And when things go wrong, you have to go in and analyze these subsystems. But in fact, almost 80% of issues in engineering, be that software, or if you're building a Aegis warship, occurs at the data exchange between systems. And so one of the things that's super important for us is addressing that data exchange. And so this isn't just for young people, but for all of employees. We've started in the last just year now, and giving all of our employees a mobile device. And on that mobile device is the Me at Campus app, or the Me at Store app, which provides them instant access to all the data they need, from financial resources to volunteer opportunities. And so what that does is that it no longer leaves the exchange of information, important essential information for frontline associates or home office associates to the manager. Now, each of those young people, each of those employees has all the information they need that we believe to strive and thrive at Walmart in their hands. And so that's one of the things, how do we address the legal information gap? And so for Walmart, I think one of the things that I mentioned LBU earlier in the 100,000 associates who take a part of it. We also launched after the pandemic, free counseling services for all 1.6 million employees. Get up to 20 free therapy counseling sessions a year. That's beyond their Walmart insurance. And so it's really how do we think more holistically about the well-being and belonging aspect of our associates. We also expanded parental leave, both for team leads and up. And so thinking about how do we provide all the things, all of our own services, and also through that Me at Campus app, access to free financial literacy information. And so it's really thinking about how do we go in store, how do we go in campus, how do we go to our supply chain facilities and ensure that the people have all things that they need to strive and thrive. And coming to Walmart, like many of you, I came to Walmart. I'm from the nonprofit space or government space, philanthropic space. And I was telling my boss I said this on this, but the people in my circle, like, people want to wear it to Walmart, right? Walmart's a dirty word in a lot of social spaces. And I took the time to read and understand. But since joining Walmart, so many of the myths, like many companies, have been dispelled, right? And so Walmart has this, it gets stuck with this 2001, 2002 framing around wage theft. But in the last 5 years, now the average starting wage at Walmart is $17. And folks don't know that story, and I think that's an important part about how to bring equity for young people, equity for survivors, and is ensuring, that they have the economic mobility to change their circumstance. So I think of all the things we offer, it is this quickly rising starting salary, starting wage, that I think is the best thing that Walmart and companies can do in the space.
It's powerful, and you didn't wait for regulation to tell you to do that.
Correct.
You did it because it's right for your business. So I wanted to come back to something you said earlier, Anne, about supply chains, a topic near and dear to, I know, both of our hearts. So when we talk about supply chains, I wanted to learn a little bit more about the supplier code of conduct you mentioned. What does it include? How do you monitor compliance? And where's the biggest risk? And how does that connect to the work of NOMI?
So, yes, just like Walmart, and as I explained before, we carefully look at our own operations first and foremost. And we're a global company. We have offices and operations in over 80 countries and sell our products in 200 countries. So that's a broad footprint to cover, but we do have frameworks and systems in place to make sure that that we are paying living wage in our own operations and beyond. Where it gets tricky is the extended supply chain. Yeah. So just like Scope 3 and environmental, which is what I usually talk about, it's the same issue with the social aspects, the social impact aspect. As you go upstream, and some of our supply chains get incredibly complex. And so what we do is we segment our suppliers. We have thousands of suppliers, just like Walmart, and we segment them as in terms of risk. So we look at the industry that they're in, the countries that they're in, and we overlay all these factors, and we develop what we call a high-risk list of suppliers. So for us, we purchase a lot of agricultural commodities, and that tends to be a big source of, unfortunately, some of the terrible things we've been discussing today. And so it's a big challenge to make sure. And in some cases, so let me take palm oil as an example. Palm oil or palm oil derivatives is in almost every product that we make, even toothpaste. And most of the palm oil comes from Southeast Asia, and that's a huge high-risk area. And the supply chain is incredibly complex because a lot of that oil comes from smallholders, and there's tens and thousands of smallholders that depend on making their living. So it's a tricky situation because you don't want to, take the standard of living out from all these smallholders. At the same time, you want to make sure that we're eradicating forced labor. We don't want anybody to have to work under, they shouldn't have to pay for their work. They shouldn't have to be indebted for work. They should have freedom of movement. And they shouldn't have their passport taken away. You know, these are the things we're looking for as we try to assess these high risk. So now we know who our high risk suppliers are. So the next step is to audit them, and we have frameworks in place. We ask them first to do a self-assessment, and then we actually go in with a third party that we partner with, known as SEDEX, and actually audit them on the ground. And now we're even using satellite technology to look and scan what's going on, because if you have issues with deforestation, chances are you have other crop issues going on. So we have a supplier code of conduct first and foremost, but then it's making sure that the suppliers are living up to that supplier code of conduct through this audit process. And so we've now audited over 80% of the high risk, and we keep increasing every year. And the last thing I'll say is, if we do discover that there is lack of compliance by a supplier, we will cut off the relationship. I mean, we verify first, of course, but we will cut off. We have a grievance process in place, and we'll manage that, but we won't bring them back in until we know it's all resolved.
Thank you. So we're running out of time, but I did want to give Katherine the last word with a quick question. We're talking about being bold. What does a business have to consider in being bold? Is it fitting into what already exists, checking the box, or designing for discomfort? I think that will leave us in a nice place.
Yeah, I mean, I think without stating the obvious, that's definitely not checking the box. And frankly, if you're trying to do work around social impact and you're not feeling uncomfortable, you're probably missing something. And you know it was uncomfortable telling friends and family, I'm sorry, I can't take your brilliant intern. Being relentless about the strategy for the system that we were creating. Realizing that Austin, Texas, while a great tech town, is not always the best community for our Black employees. Opening an office in Chicago to better address community for people. That's a real cost. That's a real cost to the business. And personal discomfort. Whether that's talking to your kids at night about racial injustice instead of reading Little Blue Truck, or opening yourself up to the possibility that you have a lot to learn. So I had an employee come into my office hours, and he slapped white fragility, this is very early in my work, white fragility on the table and was like, you need to work on intersectionality. So it's everything from not one and done from a systems perspective, and if you're not feeling uncomfortable personally, then you're probably missing something.
I think that's a good final word. I'd just like to thank our incredible speakers, the great impact we are leading. And before we get to our next networking break, I'd like to invite Carrie on stage. Thank you, everyone.